Howdy, howdy, and welcome to another wonderful trash take. Today we're going to talk about the Federal Communications Commission. So basically, they're the ones that oversee the news organizations in America, and they kind of give them grants and give them license to spread the news. Recently, the chairman's talking about taking action against a bunch of major news organizations for their blatant propaganda about the Charlie Kirk assassination. So if anyone was actually paying attention to what was happening, there was some news coming out about the guy who killed Charlie Kirk. Obviously, he's a vile sack of shit, but everyone wants to know what led him to this, how was his family life, what's his political stances, and the clear answer, if an assassin is assassinating someone, they're probably on the opposite end of the spectrum of them. Charlie Kirk was a moderate-leaning right, opposite end of the spectrum of far leftists. But you took a look at his family, and he grew up in a normal household with a bunch of MAGA, with his dad with being MAGA, and they grew up like a normal white family. So everyone's like, he must be a right-winger. That's not true. The news was purposely, after seeing that he had a normal family from Facebook photos, ignoring the fact that new evidence was coming out that he had a trans furry boyfriend, and ignoring the evidence of what was written on the bullet casings. They were just saying there were some weird slogans written on the bullet casings when it was more kind of memey, but also some anti-fascist lines. So there's a lot more evidence now that's come out to show he's a radical leftist. And the Federal Trade Commission's basically now trying to crack down on these news organizations and their unstopped propaganda in America, because a report has come out. It was some fucking survey. I want to specify here, I managed to find the poll after the fact that I made this video, and I wanted to pull it up now and show. So Polling USA has found that who shot Charlie Kirk is 24% believe Republican, 21% believe Democrat, 15% believe neither, and 40% are unsure. This is September 14th. This was 3 days ago. It's already been known that he had a trans furry boyfriend by then. This is the news lying in real time. This is the disinformation. They want you to think that it was a right-wing radical shooter that for some reason shot who the left considers a right-wing radical as well, which makes no fucking sense. That watch news think he's a MAGA Republican because the news has been basically lying and omitting key facts of evidence and ignoring the fact that the FBI says, yes, this was politically motivated terrorism from left wing. You have a news reporter that was arguing with Ted Cruz about how we don't know his political motivations, and Ted Cruz calls her out. No, the FBI just said this is left-wing radical extremism, and she's like, we can't possibly know. And then she tries to gaslight Ted Cruz saying, that's not what I said. And it's all in about 30 seconds. It's fucking hilarious. The news has been blatantly lying about this because they don't want to admit that they're part of the fucking problem and that it's their propaganda that is misleading people and taking them down such a bleak path in life that they think a political assassination of a moderate man is the only way to move forward. And so I'm going to play the interview of the FCC guy. It's about 8 minutes long. I'm going to add my commentary to it. But here you go.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are, avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful, because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying,
howdy again. This is me doing an interjection. While I was editing, it's actually been announced that Jimmy Kimmel has been fired. And so I wanted to play the clip to let people understand what he said and why it's egregious and asinine, and why that these people come out so boldly to dehumanize and belittle what happened. I want to play it for yourself so you can see it, and then I want to play the statement from the news organization that fired him.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them.
And that's exactly what the news was saying too with the woman who died on the train. The MAGA gang's out here trying to characterize this as blah. This is a commonality. They're not even changing their propaganda. They're using the same propaganda talking points and swapping the individual. They're going to do this again in the future too. Well, maybe they won't actually now if Jimmy Kimmel's getting canceled for it.
Everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition.
I honestly have nothing wrong with that. Trump's a scatterbrain and just immediately changing goals, and him saying, yeah, I'm holding up well. Also, we're here to do something else.
Construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
Bad analogy. Bad analogy. But now here's the official statement that was released by the Nexstar Media Group. As far as I can tell, they're the ones that basically own ABC. So I'm skipping the first paragraph, but Nexstar strongly objects to the recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will replace the shows and other programming in its ABC affiliated markets. Mr. Kimmel's comments about the death of Mr. Kirk are offensive and insensitive at a critical time of our nation's political discourse, and we do not believe it reflects the spectrum of opinions, views, or values that we hold, that values of the local communities in which we are located, said Andrew Colford, president of Nexus Broadcasting Division. Continue to give Mr. Kimmel a broadcast platform in the communities we serve is simply not in the public interest. And at the current time, we have made the decision to preempt his show in an effort to let cooler heads prevail as we move forward to the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. Why did Kimmel get fired? Because he went on stage, made fun of people pointing out that this is a tragedy, and then called the president mourning, like doing half-staff for Kirk, the same as a man who is loss of a goldfish. The absolute belittling of human life here is pretty fucking crazy, but you know, he got fired for it, so I'm not the only one who thinks it. Yeah, Kimmel basically said MAGA's desperately trying to show that he's not a right-winger, and I mean, it's a kind of a self-report, and it's funny to me because even Hassan came out and said this. They were saying he comes from a straight white family, his dad was MAGA, there's no way he can be a leftist shooter. Why? Are you saying all leftists are broken family retards? Is that the political implication here, opposed to him being radicalized by social media? And that was the implication. It's very clear what his implication was, but he's going to backpedal and act like he never said it and ignore it when it comes up. But that's just Hassan. And that's what I always thought was fucking hilarious, was the blatant self-report that these people honestly think that you have to be an ugly person on the outside to be an ugly person on the inside as well. They don't understand how hatred actually works. And it's very clear they're just fucking stupid.
Saying that, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts.
This guy talks too slow.
That we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's breaking fucking news. Everyone wants to know about this guy and what led him to be radicalized. The obvious answer, social media. It's almost always going to be social media at this point in time. It's the interconnectedness of online. People want the dopamine. They want to fit in. They want people to like them. Social media is the way you got to go, and you join whatever groups you can and can lead you down some bad holes.
And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And
yeah, his implication is that it's clearly MAGA, which doesn't make sense. It never will make sense to me. If someone's politically assassinated, my assumption is it's always the person on the opposite end of the spectrum of them. Charlie Kirk was a moderate-leaning right, so to me it's very clear that the person who killed Charlie Kirk must be some radical leftist, especially since Kirk was a moderate-leaning right. He wasn't a right-winger, he was a moderate-leaning right. I need people to understand that. If you don't know he's a moderate-leaning right, you actually don't understand the political spectrum in America. You don't.
Very clear. From the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC, I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest.
Yes, exactly. The government's giving these people a license, and they're shitting out blatant propaganda to lie to the American people. This license should be revoked fucking immediately. They're giving a license from our government, and they are pumping out pure propaganda and vile against the American people, and it's so fucking crazy to me. The government's done nothing to rein them in, and I don't understand that.
We can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen, but frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action. Frankly,
these companies need to be held to actual standards that you'd expect from a journalist. You have the MSNBC guy who, the moment he's told that a gunshot went off at a Charlie Kirk rally and there's videos of him being dead, he's saying, it could just be some MAGA retard shooting a gun to celebrate, guys. And then after he's told Kirk got shot, he's basically saying, hate begets hate. He said hateful words. He did hateful actions. Yeah, you can't be surprised he's shot. This is absolutely vile and abhorrent behavior. And the news organization MSNBC did fire the guy for it. But this dude was proudly allowed to go on there and say this and wasn't even stopped by the co-host telling him that Kirk got shot. It just basically let him run wild with it. They didn't think that there would be consequences for their actions, that there would be such major backlash because they've been able to push such propaganda down everyone's throats with no real questions asked. This is changing, and I'm glad. This needs to change faster, and this needs to never be allowed to happen again.
On Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
What kind of action would you see? I, at the very least, would like to have an on-air apology from Jimmy Kimmel to the Kirk family, to all of those who he slandered.
Yeah.
Because he did say that Charlie Kirk, he is effectively saying that our movement did this. Our movement killed Charlie, that Charlie was deserving of this.
Yes, they are openly saying Charlie Kirk deserved to die. And right now, I think Elon Musk commented about it, talking about Twitch and Hassan and Destiny, basically saying they deserved it. And in fact, you need more assassinations to make MAGA shut up. That's what Destiny said, not Hassan. Elon Musk commented about this. And it's specifically a standard that was set in place by Alex Jones via the Sandy Hook school shooting, where Alex Jones basically said this is a red flag, false flag terrorist attack to try to get more gun laws passed, but that the kids were basically child actors that were going to die by the state. Alex Jones said some important shit. He lost in the court of law and was ordered to pay like $1.5 billion. Elon Musk is commenting on the post of where Alex Jones is replying to Grum saying this, that how much is the lawsuit going to be, saying $100 billion is what they're expecting. And Elon Musk is saying, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. They have such a clear case of slander with what the fuck these people are saying. It's not even close. It's wild to me that these people are allowed to say vile shit and calling for more people to die, and they aren't in jail. Not saying Kimmel was calling for the Kirk family to die, but if you're saying he deserved it because he said mean words, are you fucking kidding me? Content and words like that and people saying shit like that are what are leading to more people being assassinated, because you are purposely signing off on their death warrant saying, yeah, you say mean things, you should expect to die. No, you fucking shouldn't. We have freedom of speech in America. You should be able to engage with people and open ideas in a safe and good manner. You shouldn't have to worry about some radical leftist that's being seen all these TikToks calling you for be openly killed on Reddit and on Twitter, on Twitch by your favorite streamer who has been banned and been openly calling for death. And then you finally get killed like, guys, we need to stop the political violence, guys. I've only been advocating for people to be brutally murdered that I disagree with for years, but now that someone died, we need to stop it. This is my obligatory, we need to stop the political violence tweet. My obligatory, we need to stop the political violence statement. I've been purposely and accidentally, or I've been purposely spreading hate for years and gone unchecked, but we need to stop it right now, guys. And then a few months later, I need this man dead. I need him beat up. I need him to be killed. They need to fear. Like it's show. It's performative. They don't actually mean it. They're full of hate.
Effectively, and we've seen that rear its head. This happens quite regularly, actually, on MSNBC and on other networks, where they're trying to victim blame. And what that does, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, is continues the lie and continues the threat level.
It continues the lie and makes people who are lacking critical thinking skills to realize what they're doing assume that the anchor is right. They're trusting these news anchors when they shouldn't be. These are literally paid actors. They sit there and they get paid to read a script. They don't really fucking add any value to most of it most of the time. Go look at the CNN open air talk show host every time they have like 5 or 6 anchors on there talking. It's like the most retarded shit humanly possible with one person who tries to make a common sense point and the rest just gaslight him. It's fucking wild.
To say effectively that we have no share in this problem at all on the left. This is a clear-cut case. What would you like to see done at ABC?
Well, look, I think what you said there strikes me as a very reasonable, minimal step that can be taken. I mean, obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think, you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. Again, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at. Again, we may ultimately be called to be a judge on that. But this also strikes me as sort of conduct that to some extent shows some sort of desperate irrelevance. I mean, we're sort of exiting an era where the 3 main legacy broadcast networks could control and dictate the narrative to the American people. And
that's right. That's no longer the case. The freedom of information readily available on Twitter is superior to anywhere else. I know people hate Elon Musk. I don't really care. I think he's a cool guy personally. I like what he's doing with space. But I need people to understand the most freedom of information that is readily available is on Twitter. And it's sometimes with a bias, but you can still see it yourself, and you can see multiple viewpoints and immediately understand facts of cases as it's happening. Yes, there is fake information that's spread around, but you can also see what's real if you look hard enough, or you just don't immediately see the first story and take it at full face value. You can look, you can see, you have the opportunity to educate yourself if you use a social media website like Twitter. CNN, MSNBC, all these other major news orgs, even Fox, they have a bias to it. They have a bias. That's what they do. They don't report the news anymore. They report the news plus what they think's going on, or they report the news of what they want to be going on. That is the lie. They don't ever just give you the facts of the case anymore. And that's what they did with the assassination. They're purposely omitting clear evidence that shows that this guy is not anything to do with with MAGA movement, that he is not a Republican. They're clearly admitting this evidence and publicly displaying the points that they want to show that make him look like MAGA. They don't give you a fair understanding of the news. They give you a biased perspective, and it needs to stop.
And one of the things that President Trump did when he ran for office, he ran directly at that legacy media establishment. He smashed the facade that they get to control what we say, what we think, the narrative around events. And we're seeing a lot of consequences that are flowing from President Trump doing that. I mean, look, NPR.
Yeah, Trump's even sued a bunch of news organizations for the blatant propaganda that they've said, the blatant slander that they've put against him. These organizations have people on there who do not give a fuck and say whatever they want, no matter how unhinged or retarded it is, and then they let it happen, and they just keep letting it happen until they're forced to stop. The only way they're going to be forced to stop is if the government who's giving them their license starts actually threatening to revoke the bitch, and I hope they fucking do.
NPR has been defunded. PBS has been defunded. Colbert is retiring. Joy Reid is out at MSNBC. Terry Moran is gone from ABC.
NPR is going under because of their retarded leftist news reporting. If you don't believe me, they had Hassan on a podcast right before their last, right before they lost funding. It was fucking hilarious. And NPR also talked previously about the Hunter Biden laptop story. And I think it was, we don't want to waste time reporting on fake news. It's shit like that, where the journalists will purposely select which news to amplify and completely ignore other stories. You don't believe me? Look at the Ukrainian refugee. No major news organization, besides like Fox, was covering it at all. They ignored it for an entire weekend of this heartbreaking footage of this woman being brutally murdered. And then when they came out, they said MAGA's making an issue out of it. Is MAGA being racist? They're showing something that doesn't matter. No, they're trying to set the perspective that this isn't not important to the American people of a woman being brutally murdered for sitting down and doing nothing. They're doing it purposefully because they know it hurts Democrats' soft on crime policies. It's very clear why they're doing it. They are part of the propaganda problem in America.
ABC is now admitting that they are biased. CBS has now made some commitment to us that they're going to return to more fact-based journalism. And so I think you see some lashing out from people like Kimmel, who are frankly talentless and are looking for ways to get attention. But their grip on the narrative is slipping. That doesn't mean that it's still not important to hold in the public interest standard. That's what we're going to have to do.
So we did elucidate and enumerate a number of statutes that could be used against ABC. If you would, Mr. Chairman, would you just explain for us what broadcasting in the public interest means? I don't think most
I actually don't know what that means. Yeah,
people understand actually the depth of how important it is that ABC, NBC, CBS have these gratuitous broadcast privileges granted to them by the American taxpayer.
I assume it's going to be something like immunity from being sued for certain things, but then I know people have been sued and they've won against these major news organizations. CNN, Washington Post, I think, in a third, ABC maybe, with the 2019, the kid with the MAGA hat who just stood in front of a Native American and smiled. That's all he did. They were calling for him to die. They were calling for him to be doxxed. He did nothing but stand there and smile. And they were talking about how he's clearly a racist radical. He just stood there, smiled. He said nothing. He did nothing. And he won 3 different lawsuits against all these major news organizations for unsettled amounts. It was crazy the amount of propaganda they were pushing out about how it's racist to stand there and do nothing. It's pure propaganda, and I'm glad they're being reined the fuck in.
Yeah, the right way to sort of explain this to people so they understand it is in the media landscape as relevant here, there's 2 main buckets of actors. One, you've got what we call national programmers. So that's what Comcast is, Comcast NBC. That's what Disney is, Disney ABC. They're the ones that effectively create and produce these shows. They then provide those shows to individually licensed TV stations. And those TV stations are, in the main, owned by independent companies, independent from Comcast and Disney. But Disney and Comcast both own some televisions themselves. So start from the idea that you have national programmers that create the show, including the Kimmel Show. and then they're given to and distributed over licensed TV stations. It's the licensed TV stations that have the public interest standard, including those TV stations that Comcast and Disney own. So FCC regulatory action focuses on those individual stations. And one thing that we're trying to do is to empower those local stations to serve their own communities. And the public interest means.
So instead of relying heavily on what's being given out by these major news organizations, they need to be more independent.
You can't be running a narrow.
I mean, that's like the sharp as a tack lie. There's blatant times and time again where threat to democracy, you have the 20 different news organizations and all their different levels and different communities saying verbatim the same propaganda talking points. Joe Biden, sharp as a tack. Republicans are a threat to democracy. There was nonstop clips of them overlaid saying verbatim the same 2 or 3 sentences that's oddly specific, that's using verbiage that no one's really used for years, and they're all saying the same thing. Yeah, it's very clear they got marching orders. I guess they're going to be cracking down on that. I don't understand what this entails still.
Partisan circus and still meeting your public interest obligations. It means you can't be engaging in a pattern of news distortion. We have a rule on the book.
Okay. Can't be engaging in a pattern of news distortion. So maybe saying something like Joe Biden's sharp as a tack when that's very clearly a fucking lie after the first debate, and they all 180'd and act like they never said it. It was fucking hilarious to see. They wanted you to close your eyes about the obvious facts that you can see for yourself and listen to them because they know better than you. That was one of the most modern major lies. Fucking Trump walked the stage with Joe Biden. At one point he was so incoherent, even Trump said, I don't think he knows what he's saying. And rightfully so. And I felt bad. That man needs to be in a retirement home enjoying the rest of his years, not being a fucking show pony for the Democrats because they don't have an actual fucking candidate. Anyone that still watches the news, I feel bad for you because you don't actually get a full picture, or you don't get a unbiased picture. You get an extremely biased picture that might be omitting half the facts of a case because the news will lie about everything all the time. They'll purposely omit race during crimes that they find inconvenient. They'll elevate race against crimes. They'll elevate race in crimes that they want to be national outrage.
This is me adding more facts to this after the case to better solidify the point. The most recent case of this is the Maryland man. Some of you might have heard about a Maryland man who brutally murdered a 19-year-old and threw her body off the side of a highway. Turns out he was an illegal immigrant. Turns out he also had a previous conviction of a DWI, and at that point, he should have been deported from our country. Why wasn't he, you ask? Because he was in Prince George's County, which is classifying themselves as a sanctuary city where they don't really cooperate with ICE. These are Democrats in power and their policies getting people killed. This is why they leave out key facts of the story. This is why people have to independently fact check these news organizations constantly, because they don't want you to know illegal immigrants that shouldn't be here, that are committing blatant crimes like DWI, and they're not getting deported, are then also going on to murder people. It looks bad for them, and it cost an American citizen her life.
That interprets a public interest standard that says news distortion is something that is prohibited. Likewise, we have a rule that addresses broadcast hoaxes. And so, again, over the years, the FCC...
I think that's what Fox actually got hit with. They said some news story about a bunch of voting machines were tampered with, and it was complete fucking lie. I don't want to say they faced like they got like a $250 million fine for it. They got a fat fucking fine for it. And that's how it should be. But my issue is I see news lying every day, and then I see Fox is the only one that's actually being held liable. That doesn't make sense.
He has stepped back from enforcing it, and I don't think it's been to the benefit of anybody. Just look at the credibility of these legacy media. It's absolutely through the floor. They used to be able to say at least they were more trustworthy than Congress, but now they're even less trustworthy than Congress. And so I think as a business matter for them...
I grew up with a lot of right-wing news coming in from my dad. He watched a lot of Alex Trebek and Alex Jones growing up. But he also explained to me he's watching the far right and he's watching the far left. He'd see what Alex Jones would say, and then he'd look at what CNN's saying, and then he'd laugh about how they're comparatively extremely different. But he would get differing perspectives on the same news story, and it would show the bias on both sides. But you could still pull apart the bias and see the essence of what they're saying to get the real facts of the case. You can get manipulated by anyone on any sides. Getting multiple perspectives from the same news story is probably your best way to understand what's actually happening in the world. I like to watch Channel 5 News on YouTube, and that's because Andrew will actually go out there and he'll try to get every side that he can, anyone that's willing to engage with him in a conversation. He'll get the far leftist, he'll get the far rightist, he'll show there's retards on both sides, and he'll show there's common people on both sides, that there's good people in the world, and that's why I like that. That's why I like that type of news. That's also why I like Twitter, because I can immediately see what the right-wingers are saying, go in the comment section, what are the left-wingers saying, and you can see immediately why it's either being openly ignored or why it's trying to be broadcast and amplified across the board. People will try to make nothing burgers out of something just because they want to be relevant. People will absolutely try to make a big deal out of something irrelevant. It's all dependent on what their goal is. What are they trying to push? Are they trying to push political divide in America? Are they trying to start a race war? Are they trying to talk about how much politics is bad and how much you should hate your fellow neighbor? There's always some form of bias. Just be aware.
Something has to change. And at the FCC, we need to reinvigorate this. So again, there's actions that we can take on licensed broadcasters. And frankly, I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we
No, they're not going to. No, they're not going to.
Licensed broadcaster are running the possibility of fines or license revocation from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion. So I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
No, they're basically bending over backwards and putting whatever news story comes in front of their desk, reading off whatever line they're given. Like, it's very clear. It would be nice to see it change. It would be nice to eventually turn on the news and no, I'm not actually getting the most biased retardation humanly possible straight from someone who has a 60 IQ that's just been able to stand there and smile and has a really good anchor voice. Like, that's not what I want. I don't want that kind of retardation in America.
We are.
You believe that what Jimmy Kimmel said rises to the level of news distortion?
Look, again, the FCC could be called upon to be an ultimate judge in that, but at this point, I think it's clear. It appears to be clear that you can make a strong argument that this is sort of an intentional effort to mislead the American people about a very core, fundamental fact, a very important matter. At the end of the day, if we do get called upon to cast a vote on this, Disney will have a chance to put in their arguments and explain it. But
yeah, he's saying right now as it stands, yeah.
This is a very, very serious issue right now for.
He's saying right now as it stands, yeah, they're gonna have to try to give a decent explanation, but they're probably fucked. So since I originally tried to record this, like I said, Jimmy Kimmel's already been let go. Apparently, there's been leaked conversations between why he was let go, and it was Disney panicking that the Trump administration was going to start revoking their license with the FCC interview from this interview that I just showed, which I didn't realize was such a critical interview, but that was the chairman of the FCC, and he's saying, hey, this is pretty fucking bad, and it looks like we might weigh in there. Turns out Disney took it seriously, and they went ahead and preemptively removed Jimmy Kimmel. But he's not the only one to come out against this. This started a shit war on social media. This is a Twitter account I follow, Yeet. I like him. He does streamer drama, literally news for and about streamers. He's been pretty open about where he gets his sources from, and he gives a little bit of a bias to it, but he's more of a funny guy, and I like it. But since this came out that Sinclair suspended Jimmy Kimmel, Keith Olbermann said, burn in hell Sinclair, alongside Charlie Kirk. I don't think it was a good idea for Keith Olbermann to come out and say what he said about Kirk, especially so recently after the incident. But I need people to understand, one of the main reasons Kimmel is getting canceled is because he's spreading blatant propaganda. Yes, what he said about Kirk was hateful as well, but it's the blatant propaganda part that people are tired of from these leftist news organizations. Kirk was killed, and now they're trying to lie about the reason the person who killed him just because they don't want to admit the harsh truth that it's their side openly laughing and cheering and wanting more people dead, so it's obviously a leftist killer. They don't want to admit that. That's why they are spreading the lie. It is a bold-faced lie, and they know it. And the reason why it's burning up on social media is because leftists are now being held to the fire. They can't lie anymore. If they keep lying, there's going to be consequences for it. And I want the news to be honest. I don't want the continuous lies. I think this will be a good thing overall. Even Dean Withers, who is someone I'd previously talked about, I think I call him Dean Winters, whatever the fuck his last name actually is. He said Trump got Jimmy Kimmel's show pulled because Jimmy said something he didn't like. Free discourse is under attack in America. And I'm just like, I think it was under attack when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, I'd say, when he was having an open debate in the public realm of ideas and died. I think that's when it got under attack. And I think this is a key fact that a lot of these leftists are completely missing, is the fact that their side assassinated someone and then all of their fans came out and openly cheered is pretty fucking bad. And other people that are cheering and making jokes about it, I'm not against making jokes, but belittling him and trying to dehumanize Charlie Kirk after he's gone is morally reprehensible. If you get fired for it, tough fucking luck, buddy. Go pound sand. I just wanted to add that in. This is rapidly changing. He could be reinstated if they get enough pushback from leftists, because now I believe there is a boycott against Disney. So Disney apparently owns the Sinclair network or something similar to that, and they're the ones that made the final call to pull Jimmy Kimmel. And so now a lot of leftists are coming out saying boycott Disney, boycott Disney, boycott Disney, which is I'm going to be honest. Every leftist I know always has a Disney plushie somewhere. Disney's one of those where they have a tight grip on the leftist market of the social media and media in America. So I'll be curious to see if this actually affects Disney, if they reverse it or not. But I just want to add some context there that this has rapidly evolved since I originally made this video. And it might be changed even after I post this video. We need now more than ever is leadership from our president. We need Trump to come down, and we need these radical news organizations to be reined in. There are systems in place that are supposed to protect the interests of the American people, and that is not what's happening. There are blatant lies being told and being pushed by this propaganda machine for some odd reason that don't want to admit that the assassin was a leftist radical extremist. And yes, if you're willing to kill someone, you're a radical extremist. Now, which one you are, I don't know. Depends on the situation. But if you like the video, let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to subscribe to my channel or like the video itself. I hope you have a wonderful time. This was an interesting topic. It was something that I saw. I was originally going to include it with the one about Twitch being brought forward in front of Congress, but I decided just to make its own video about it because it seemed a little bit separate. But, you know, I still wanted to report on it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you had a wonderful time. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, later.